Welcome back to another show of LatinX Business Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Gomez, and I have an MBA in entrepreneurship, and I also have an enrolled agent license that allows me to practice before the IRS. And I do focus on my business on tax and bookkeeping work with small businesses as well as freelancers and S Corps, C Corps, and partnerships. Now, they say that to know where you're going, you have to remember where you came from. Today's guest isn't just navigating the world of leadership, she's redesigning it. She is a Latina leader on a profound mission to honor the generations that paved the way and to liberate the generations yet to come. And that's truly where our conversation focused on today as well. Please welcome to the show, Michelle Seijas. Michelle began in the classroom as a bilingual education teacher fueled by deep-rooted commitment to her community. Over 15 years in K-12 education, she wore every single imaginable hat: instructional coach, vice principal, district coordinator, and high school principal. But her impact didn't stop at the school gates. She eventually stepped into her nonprofit sector as the founding executive director of the Surge Institute in Oakland, California. There, she built a powerhouse team dedicated to one thing: elevating Black and Latinx education leaders to create the kind of transformative change our youth deserve. In a country where less than 1% of Latinas hold a doctorate, Michelle decided to change that statistic. She earned her ED from UC Davis, specifically focusing on how to dismantle the systemic devaluation of Latinx students. But here is where Michelle's story takes a beautiful, soulful turn. During a 6-month sabbatical, she went inward. She traded the grind for the study of the nervous system, somatics, and ancestral practices. She looked at how leadership impacts our mental, emotional, and physical well-being, searching for the calm and clarity that so many of us lose in the noise of our careers. Michelle reemerges not as an expert, but as a trauma-informed certified coach and consultant. She is a woman who has mastered the art of being her authentic self in every room she enters. She's here today to help us grow our confidence through the lens of equity, value our unique strengths instead of hiding them, and creating a vision for a life that feels as good as it looks. Hi, Michelle. Thank you for joining the Latinx Business Podcast show today.
Hello. Happy Friday. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, thanks. I appreciate your time. I know we're all busy entrepreneurs, so like anytime you allow for us, we are very grateful. But yeah, let's get straight to the first question. Tell me, what is your preferred pronoun?
She, her, ella.
She, her, and ella. Okay, I like that. I was like, most people just be like her, him,
Yeah.
So if you don't mind, I'll stick with ella.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. But yeah, tell me, you built your career around developing Latino leaders. What moment or experience made you realize this was your life's work?
So I started out my career in K-12 education and worked predominantly in migrant communities and with Latinx students and families, and thought I wanted to be a superintendent someday. And I got to high school principalship. I did it for about 5 years, and it was back in like 2017. I had this moment where I was like, I actually don't think I can do this for the rest of my career. And so I thankfully, had been really good with money. And so I was able to close up that last school year and take a 6-month sabbatical and just fully take 6 months to rest, spend a lot of time reflecting and kind of rethink life. And as a first gen Latina who was like the first to graduate college and all the things, you can imagine my parents, God bless them, were like, okay, you'll figure it out. Like they trusted me to go through the journey.
¿Qué vas a hacer ahora?
I remember my dad asked, I was trying to explain it to them, and my dad was like, ¿Qué quiere decir que you're going to find yourself? And I was like,
Oh, really?
I don't know yet, but I'll let you know when I figure it out.
Yeah.
But what I figured out during that time was that the thing I really loved about all those years was the mentoring coaching aspect of it. When I got to sit with students in high school and help them figure out like what they were going to do for college and careers and degrees and all that stuff. When I got to sit with my team and help them map out like the futures of their leadership and all that. And I was like, what I really loved was the mentoring coaching. So what would it look like to get to do more of that? Social justice work matters to me and all of this. So it was a moment of clarity to really kind of sit and unpack what was the most important to me. And from there, I ended up launching into being the executive director of a nonprofit focused on leadership development for Black and Latinx leaders. And then I got to see like in this concentrated place, like what are our needs? And what came up over and over again, I was there for running about 5 cohorts of the leadership program, is our people weren't applying. We were the highest demographic in the community I was in. Could get like tons of applications from our Black candidates. And I'd be like, I don't even got one, not even one application from my Latinx people. So to be clear, I never moved a cohort forward without us, but it took a lot of work to get folks to fill out the application and get it in and go through the whole process in a way that I didn't have to do for our other candidates. So of course that brought up a lot of questions for me.
Yeah.
And so from there, I started spending more and more time trying to figure out, why are we having to do so much more recruitment? Why are we not showing up in these spaces where we can be elevating our leadership and getting promoted and doing these things? And then from there, I started moving into now what I do in my business, which is predominantly working with Latinx leaders. About 80% of my clients are Latinx folks who I'm supporting with leadership development. And some organizations will bring me in to specifically work on group coaching, leadership development for the Latinx employees in their organizations.
That even for me, that brings up so many thoughts and questions right now. And I'm like, I wonder what is factoring in to Latinos not applying to these leadership programs, right?
Oh, I got a lot to tell you.
So I mean, yeah, like what would be like I guess like an example of that? Like because like the only I mean, one, leadership positions. Now the older I get, the more I'm like, yeah,
Yeah,
work. It comes with a lot of work and
it
a lot of
does.
responsibility, right? So like, what could be some of the factors out there that are affecting these numbers, or like for you to be getting Latinos to join your programs?
Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of years now. I mean, I also did, so I will also say before I left K-12, when I was on that superintendent journey, I did get my doctorate. And so my dissertation work was on the systemic devaluation of Latino students in schools. And so I kind of had all this foundational research around like, why are our kids not even doing amazing when it comes to school? And then from there, I've noticed now as I'm working with adults, I'm like, wow, I've actually had the benefit of seeing the transition from child in kindergarten all the way to adult now in a corporate space, how these things kind of translate. So I've got a few theories, but one I'll say I used to observe all the time was our familias. Like even just interacting with families at the schools, like they would always just kind of be the quiet families. I'd be sitting off in the corner and then I would come over and I would ask them a lot of questions and like, let's try to figure out what to do for your child. And they would be like, well, you all know better than I do. I don't have a degree. I'm just grateful that like you're helping my child.
Right.
And so it's beautiful that our community has so much gratitude for being here and for the services and the opportunities and things that come. But sometimes having a lot of gratitude means we don't push back on the system. We don't push back on the ways that we're being held down. And we're not really kind of putting pressure on the system and on leaders that currently are in spaces to make more space for us to listen to us and to create opportunities for us. So I've seen a thread of that along the way of just a lot of, I'm just happy to be here, or I'm just grateful I got this spot and I'm not trying to mess this up. So I've even had folks who've gotten management positions in an organization and they're like, actually, once I got my position, I found myself kind of shutting down and not pushing back as much, not talking as much, because I can't risk all of this. And so I think there's multiple layers to it, but I think just as a community, gratitude for the immigration journey that a lot of folks have gone through means that we are less likely to push back on the system. I think we're getting more and more people who are willing to do that now, but I think for a long time that hasn't been. And also, we're just kind of nervous that we're going to lose it. It all kind of sometimes feels a little good to be true. I made it this far ahead of the generation before me. Am I really going to push it and try to keep going? And something could happen that makes me actually lose everything that I've just built. So I see that kind of plays into it too. And as we keep talking, I can share more research and stuff, but I would say that those are kind of two big themes that I've noticed come up just as a collective.
Oh yeah, attitude. I mean, that makes me think back and like, how our Latinx communities or our people are just like, keep your head down and keep working, and you'll be fine. You'll be fine. And then for me, now being a business owner, and I'm also part of the chamber, the Los Angeles Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, board member. I'm all like, oh yeah, it's a whole nother job,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm running my business, and then I'm running help run another nonprofit. So yeah, the complexities, I think. But yeah,
You actually bring up, so I have research around that.
okay,
So when we were running the leadership development program it was in the Bay Area, we actually had them do a 360 assessment when they would join and they would do another one at the end. And 100% of the time, What you just said is actually what the data showed. All of the top skills that they would get, and when you do a 360, we would have their supervisor, the people they manage, the external partners, like, so it was a wide gamut of people who would be giving them the assessment. And 100% of the time, their highest scores were hard worker, care about kids, mission driven, because it was like education focused.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then the bottom ones were strategy, negotiation, management of people, vision. So we can get to a certain point in our career where working hard does benefit us. I can promote and people are like, oh, I'm promoting. But the thing is you're going to hit a ceiling because to get into the C-suite, to get into the higher VP, you want to go national, whatever it might be levels, they're going to be asking you to also be able to do strategy and negotiation and being able to manage people and all those things. So if your whole identity as a leader is being a hard worker, it's going to actually block you at a certain point because you haven't also been building all the other skills that are necessary. And we get praised so much for being hard workers. And of course, you want to lean into what people are complimenting you on.
Of course, yeah.
But there has to be a place where you are also advocating to get into the rooms where these other conversations are happening. And a lot of times we either don't know to advocate for that, or again, we just kind of hold back because we're just waiting for somebody to see our hard work and offer us that. But I mean, I'm sure you've seen this and I see it all the time. At a certain point, people don't keep promoting you just because of your hard work.
But yeah, no, it's the ones that speak up.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I was just gonna say something I thought about. I was just on a call with one of the other board members, like right before this meeting, and they're like, "Hey, you can stick around." I was like, "We'll see. The year's not over yet," because it is a lot of work, and you do gotta speak up, and you will face these uncomfortable situations. So that, and I've encountered a couple uncomfortable situations because I was just voted in this year to be the treasurer, and like my mind just goes to like questioning everything and anything. But with that comes with like a lot of responsibility and work that comes
Yeah.
along with it. It's just tough to have for me to hear that because I feel like our people in our communities are extremely intelligent and they know what's going on. They know what's happening. They know how to strategize. They know how to negotiate. But we hold back, right? There's the moment where like, I mean, I'll be 100% honest too. I'm like, well, I could speak up, but if I speak up, that's only gonna create more problems, or it's gonna bring me more responsibility. Or plus, if I speak up, I'm not gonna get compensated extra at the moment. So
Mm-hmm.
like, my mind always goes to the money now, right? Because I'm a business owner and I'm also like an MBA, and I'm like, But you really do gotta speak up in order to get promoted in the future. But yeah, okay. So you worked across K through 12 nonprofits and executive leaderships. What unique challenges do Latino leaders face that others might not see?
I mean, I think to kind of go on the thread we just said, and I'll go off what you just mentioned. So we're the hard workers. We need to actually advocate to get into those spaces. And we need to also be advocating to get the additional support we need that somebody else might not be able to offer. So I haven't run it in a couple of years, but I actually used to do a group program where it wasn't necessarily an organization hired me, but people could just on their own opt into the program and just, pay themselves. And a lot of times when folks came into the program, I would say, let's go ahead and start looking at the ways you're going to advocate for yourself within your job context to have them cover your coaching services, to have them pay for you to be in this group program. Because if you're working in an organization where oftentimes our folks are like, I'm the only one in the office, and most of my folks are Latinas, so I'm the only Latina in the office, then it's going to be really hard for a white man to fully be able to help you to get into the nuances of what's uncomfortable for you in your leadership development, or to help support you in the blocks that are coming up for you when things feel uncomfortable and you're pushing yourself in ways that generationally have not happened before you. So
Right.
not to say they can't support you and coach you in other ways, but there is something special about being able to be in a space with other folks who have similar backgrounds and experiences where you can openly say, this thing makes me really nervous. This thing doesn't feel safe, so that we can work on that together. And then you can go back into your job space and know how to advocate. So you can say, hey, I noticed you're putting together a team for the next strategic planning. It'd really be important to my leadership development to be on that team. Who can I talk to make sure that I get to be a part of that team? That's advocating for yourself. Or being able to say, hey, I'd really love to move into such and such leadership position next. I've noticed that to do that, I'm going to have to be able to manage people. I've never managed anyone. How can I start to get some experience here in managing people or learning more about the philosophies of how we do that? So I'll be prepared when that time comes. So sometimes it's just how do you know what you need and then going out there and just saying, I just want to start being in the rooms where this is happening so that I can grow and develop. That at least helps to build up a little more robust experience beyond just I'm a hard worker that folks
Yeah.
can be doing. And I'm a big advocate for you should be telling your job that they owe you coaching. You should have somebody who gets to work with you one-on-one to really help you through the things that not everybody at work can always help you with. And at work, you can't say the things you can say to me confidentially. So, like to what you just said, a lot of times folks don't really know how to have the harder conversation or kind of it feels risky. So,
Right.
I'm the person they can practice with. They'll say, hey, I'm about to have this meeting with my boss. I want to talk about blank, 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 but I'm not sure how to do that. So it's cool. Let's map it out, plan it. Now I'm going to pretend to be the boss. You're going to be you, and we're going to practice that together. And then I have like voicemail apps where they can check in with me regularly. Hey, I just got out of this meeting. Such and such thing happened. I'm actually not really sure what to do next. Where do I go from here? Like being able to actually have very hands on support is what we need. We can't just be expecting people to just miraculously know how to be a great leader or miraculously know how to do all these executive level skills that they've never been taught before because we don't learn these things in school. And so that's how we go out there and advocate for ourselves and say, this is what I need to be able to become the leader that I know I'm meant to be.
Oh my God. What you just said right now made me think about three women in my life. They're Latinas. I think they're very intelligent. I think so. One is like my best friend, and recently she was just like, "Ah, I just have these leaders and these new leaders, and I'll just get new ones in the next school year."
Mm-hmm.
But they've approached her several times to just become part of admin at LAUSD, and she just
Mm-hmm.
stays back as like being a special ed teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So, but she's really, really intelligent and she's really good at what she does. And, I think you just hit the mark there because the other two people I think about are my other best friend from college and my sister too. They've not been given leadership positions because they've stayed quiet or they hold back. But if they had that coaching in place, maybe they would feel more confident to like step up and say like, no, like I do deserve that seat at that table, Because then if you don't get that seat at the table, then you are losing money. And like for me, it's very important for you to get that money. Why? Because then you take care of yourself, but you also can help take care of your family members or your nephews or the next generation that's coming up, right? So like by not taking on those extra roles, you then lose more money in the long term of your lifespan. I mean, I don't
Mm-hmm.
have like concrete numbers, but right now you just made me think like, yeah, like coaching and how does that differ from women and men, Latinx women and men, because yeah, you tell me and your expertise.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. I will say I've seen a significant shift over the, however many decades now it's been, maybe like 2 decades. I'm not that old. But
Hmm.
I will say in the beginnings of my leadership journey, I started getting invited to like leadership conferences and whatnot that were specifically for our people. And in the beginning, I remember I'd sit in the room and be like, why is everybody on the board of this organization a man? Why is everybody who speaks at this conference a man? Why is everybody? And so I remember like kind of starting to ask a lot of questions about like, so what's up with the dynamic here? Because it feels like we created a Latino space that just actually replicated all the machismo stuff, but now it's just like we're all in the space being leaders together. Like, why are we not also on the board and whatnot? So I will say that, and the response back, which kudos to them, the response back was, then you should sign up to be on those things. And I remember I was like, touche, like I get it, I'm saying it, so I should go put myself out there, and I did.
Got it. Yeah, yeah.
But I will say I have started to see a shift in that there were places where we were aligning together, but we were replaying a lot of the dynamics that still come out into like, we're still going to put the man up first before we're going to put a woman up first and all that kind of stuff. I'm starting to see more diversification of like, there's more balance in boards and who you see being represented in like a lot of these. And I'm talking about like the big spaces. I'm sure there's a lot more nuance in other places, but like in conferences and things like that, I think we're finding more balance there. But I think for a long time, even when us as Latinas were moving into leadership seats, it was still with like, I'm in the leadership seat, but I'm still giving more space to like the Latino leader in the space to be the one who's kind of talking more, kind of setting the agenda, all that. And I am seeing a shift where we're starting to find more balance in that. But I think that as a whole, though, none of us have gotten to a place where we can say like we've landed on what it looks like to be Latinx leaders and all the things that go with that. So I think collectively there is still growth needed. But I will say that for a while it felt like Latinas were even farther behind in the journey than our Latino counterparts were in getting into a lot of these leadership seats.
Yeah.
But I think we're doing a little better now.
Okay. Yeah, no, and that's a fair assessment, What about, let's see, when you're coaching Latino leaders, what are the most common mindset barriers you see holding them back?
Interestingly enough, so when folks are interested in working with me, probably similar for you, they can go on my website, they can schedule a call, and I have some questions for them to answer just to get a sense of who they are before we start chatting. And I do not consider myself a confidence coach. I did not think that was what I was going to do, but the majority of what people list as the thing they want support with is confidence building. And so I think it goes to some of the other things I mentioned. I'm just happy to be here. I don't want to rock the boat. Like, I know I could be doing more. I want to do more, but at the same time, what am I putting at risk for doing that? And so there's this part of them that's like, I want to speak up more. I want to apply for the bigger things. I want to have more of a voice and a place in a lot of the seats, the spaces that I'm in, but there's something that's holding me back. And so for a lot of folks, to me, confidence is self-trust. Do you actually trust that you're going to put yourself out there and no matter what happens, I got me and I'm going to be able to figure it out? Or am I feeling like I'm going to put myself out there and then the whole world's going to fall apart? So some of it is helping people build self-trust, actually acknowledging, like, I've got some phenomenal people I work with who've done amazing things. And I'm like, we need to collect your success receipts because you're not giving yourself enough credit for what you've done. So sometimes it's helping people learning to trust themselves, being able to really build their bank of like the successes they have that they can lean on in the times when they're like really doubting and unsure of if they can take that step. I do a lot of nervous system work with folks, like understanding what puts you in freeze mode or fawn mode, which just makes you shut down. And what are some practices we can do to actually help your body, to help you to feel safer, having that conversation, taking that leap, doing that stuff. So that's become a big one that I had not expected along the way, that people have named, I need to really work on my confidence. And then I would also say a lot of folks are also just like, I kind of don't know what I don't know. So I need help in being able to navigate conversations and getting into these spaces where I'm not really sure how to handle the conversation. I'm not really sure what to do when so-and-so shuts me down, changes the conversation, doesn't really give me the space that I think I deserve. And so sometimes it's also helping people really understand, like, what's the best place for you? Once you're really clear on what you want to lead and how you want to do it, like, let's also make sure we don't just take a job because it's the right role and the right amount of money. I believe you can still make the money and still find the role, but in a place that's going to have people who will support you and an environment that's going to support you. And sometimes we're also struggling because we're forcing ourselves to work in places that are just not the best for us and are actually telling us over and over again, we're not supportive of Latino, Latinx leadership. We just want you to do the work. And so sometimes it's also going to require pivoting and making some shifts and helping people do that. But that's some of the stuff that I see a lot when people are filling out forms that they want to work together.
Yeah, and even right now, I just thought about like they need to get to a point where they can identify whether this current job position or company they're working for is really going to support them to move
Yeah.
forward to a leadership position. Because it really comes down to like these companies putting the money in their talk, right? Like, are they really supporting like the coaching? Like, that's like right now the biggest thing that you've taught me so far in this conversation is that the company should put the money into coaching you as a Latino leader, because finding mentors that have been through what you want to go through or where you want to be at, that's a little bit tough. I mean, everyone's working really hard, everyone has a lot of things on their plate, so like even grabbing 5-10 minutes from someone that is like at that level might be
Mm-hmm.
really hard for you to attain on your own.
Yeah.
So um for me, like, yeah, if the companies are not putting the money in the coaching and stuff like that, then they're not really supporting these like initiatives, right? But yeah, no, that's great information. Let me go on to the next question. So how can Latino professionals start to own their value in spaces where they may be underestimated or underestimated?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing is we have to believe it ourselves.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's formal ways about it. So I'm a fan of StrengthsFinder. So I usually will tell folks, take StrengthsFinder, let's work through it together. I've actually had some organizations bring me in to do StrengthsFinder work for them together collectively as an organization. So figuring out what are the top 5 strengths that I have. And if you want to do it informally, I give people like little prompts and I'm like, text your friends or I remember during my sabbatical, this was back when I was still on Facebook, I literally just put a prompt on Facebook. When you think of me, what are the top things that you think of? What would you come to me to help you with? And, a bunch of people started responding and I just was like, okay, cool. Like people see some stuff in me that like, I'm glad they see. And wow, I'm surprised by some of the things that people have also noticed about me. So there's all kinds of different ways to start kind of what exactly is it that I'm really strong at that I don't even have to think about, that I just do? It just flows naturally from me. Once you know that, then how do you advocate to actually be able to do things in that realm? Because what happens is a lot of times we're too busy trying to solve our weaknesses. And I heavily put that in quotes, right? Like our weaknesses, the things we got to work on, fix. Some of them, yeah, we might have to fix for the roles that we're in. And I think sometimes we're trying to work on things that it's just better for me to have a teammate who can do that instead of me. Like, so as a team, how do I think about what I'm really great at? I get to do what I'm great at. My counterpart on this team, they're really great at something different. We're going to balance each other out. And then this third person on our team is really great at this other thing. Oh, cool. Now between the three of us, like we just rounded out, we're a bomb together. So it's like our value has to be that we can name it and actually advocate for it. So an example I would give you in terms of advocating for it is, I have a client who was getting prepped to be a successor to take over for her boss. And again, boss is not Latino and was kind of like, had some forethought for, I know I can coach a lot of things here, but I also know there's a lot of things that she is navigating that I cannot. Will you come in and support her to get ready to step into this leadership role? Great, let's do it. And one of the things we've been talking about is the ways that she's being encouraged to show up as what's not natural for her. She's not an extrovert. She's not a go walk around the streets and kiss all the babies kind of person, but that's what she's being encouraged to do to be a strong leader. When we look at her strengths, when we look at the patterns of when she's been the most successful, it's actually when she gets to work one-on-one with people or in small teams side by side and really get into the work together. That's a very different leadership style than somebody who's really great at getting on the microphone and going to all the events and doing all the things. So our conversations have been, if we know this is what your strengths are, instead of trying to force you into something that's not you, how can we now go advocate for this leadership instead? So saying, hey, I hear you on that feedback. And I want you to know that what actually would be the better way for me to build relationships and show up in my leadership is to be able to do this. And, let me do it for a while and let's see if we can get to the same place that you're wanting me to. But this is going to feel more natural for me. There'll be more ease and I'll be happier doing this than having to force myself to do it the other way. So when you know what your strengths are and you can name them, then you also will know how to advocate for yourself when people are asking you to do things that just don't feel natural. And you can be like, actually, this would be a better way for me to approach that. If you're cool with it, I want to do this instead. And then we can circle back later and see like what might mean to be shifted, adjusted, whatnot. But it's not us, which can tend to happen, automatically being like, okay, cool, I'll do whatever you ask me to do because I just want to be able to keep my job. And then we're burnt out, we're stressed, we're miserable, and we're not actually in our best selves.
Yeah, self-awareness. That's what I'm thinking about right now. Because I was gonna ask you, how does it differ for someone, or how does this look like for someone that's shy versus outgoing? Because we all come in the spectrum of personalities. So, like to me, like how does like working with a shy Latino leader look like versus an outgoing one? And what has been your experience? Like do you see more success in like outgoing Latinos or shy Latinos? Because you know what if you're not born as an extrovert?
Yeah, that's real. I mean, to be real, there is a ton of data, regardless of, race or gender, that the people who tend to end up in CEO type positions are folks who are extroverts. So that's real.
Okay.
I would offer, though, that I've sat in a lot of places where I've worked with other people who were introverted leaders, and they're not actually like proud of being an introverted leader. They're kind of like, dang, I'm not like them. So I think it still goes back to, can you build your confidence around like, this is who I am as a leader. It's cool that I'm not like everybody else and I can show up differently, but I can still show up. There are places where people who are doing leadership differently can still stand out because people care about being seen and heard and understood. If you can do that regardless of whether you're on a mic or you're sitting with them in a small team, they're going to ride for you. So how do you actually utilize your strength? And if your strength is introversion, don't hate yourself for having that. Because I feel like so often when I'm talking to people who have introversion, it's constantly like feeling bad about themselves for it. I want you to convert that into being confident and owning that that's your leadership. And then how can you show up in that? Instead of actually, that's my leadership and it's wrong and it's not what everybody else is, so it must mean I have to change who I am. And that's what I tend to see a lot of. And so I think that's why you just get more shutting down. You get more, I'm not going to kind of show up for that thing. But again, I've also seen people who, if you can build a team and you can get people to really feel like you've got them, it doesn't matter. They're going to ride for you and they're going to be advocating for you and pushing for you to get that next position and all those other things. So own it and then just figure out how you actually navigate that in a way that's going to look different. And to your point, sometimes that means you're going to have to look for mentors that may not be directly in front of you, because
Yeah.
the mentors directly in front of you may not be the thing that you're trying to grow into.
Ooh, yeah, I like what you just said. And then I was just thinking about society. How much of our society values extroverts and media and artists and all these people that don't look like you, right? On TV. What does culturally rooted leadership look like for Latino leaders, and why is it so powerful?
I mean, the beautiful thing about us is we're so community oriented. I actually did a speaking series down here in the LA area few years ago, and I shared a bunch of research that came out of, I'm totally going to mess up the name, but UCLA has I think it's the Latino Futures Lab is what it's called. And they're doing a bunch of research on what does Latino leadership look like in the state of California. And specifically, they had done some research around Latinas, and they had a report that came out. And when they were looking at what makes us different, they had done interviews and research with Latina leaders across the state of California. And what stood out was we are very community oriented. We come and we bring others with us. In the work that we do, we don't just think about Latinidad. We do definitely think about that, but we're also like, oh, how do we also invite the Black folks in? How do we also invite the Asian folk in? How do we also acknowledge that LGBTQIA needs to be part of this conversation as well? How do we also acknowledge? So they're like constantly also thinking about bringing coalition together, as opposed to I just come in and advocate for myself and that's where it stays. So what the research showed was that the beauty is that we are community oriented, which means we bring people together, we bring more people in. And to some of the stuff I said before, it is so beautiful that we also have a lot of gratitude, because it shows in the ways that we show up in the spaces that we're in. And we also are constantly going to come as the collective. Now, of course, there's always going to be one-offs, because I always got somebody who wants to tell me the story of that one boss they had. Of course, we're not a monolith, right? Like, you're still
No,
going to have
yeah.
some stuff that's going to happen.
Yeah, yeah.
But as a collective, what we've seen in the research is that, like, we don't show up like traditional leadership has. We are not just very individualistic, get mine and get out. For the most part, we're changing what it looks like to be a leader. And my hope in the work that I'm doing and as I collaborate with other people is that we're also starting to redefine what leadership looks like as we become the majority. And in California, I think we already have become the majority. But as that continues to happen, we also don't want to become the new face of leadership and
Right.
replicate a lot of the old stuff that has not worked for us. And so I'm seeing positive moves towards us actually being able to change what leadership looks like and how we define it.
Yeah, and I wonder if that really is going to be the challenge for our generation
Oof,
moving
it already
forward,
is.
right? Right?
Yeah.
Because like how can I say, what am I thinking about? This, like, it's a little controversial. Like, I'm like, we move into these positions, and we're like, yes, like we finally made it. Or like, right, like we have like Becerra running for governor right now, and like, all these Latino leaders before that have come before him. And like I grew up in East LA, right? So like even huge name there
Yeah.
growing up my whole life. And then I ended up going to school with her daughter, Valeria. But like it's just so interesting, like how these individuals are viewed in our community
Yeah.
at some point as well. But I was just kind of thinking like not replicating these like systems or protocols that were set before us is a challenge, because we've learned from individuals that came before us, and they learned from whoever was there before them as well. So I feel like when you're in any leadership position, it's always up to you to decide if you're going to continue that process or protocol that has been set in place for the last 20, 30, 40 years, or you're really, because it takes more time, it takes more effort, it takes more brain and energy, right? Because when you get home, you are fried, you're dead. Like, I get it, I totally get it. I mean, right now, because I'm doing my business and I'm running the chamber, and I'm not running it on my own by any means, right? I have like the president, the vice president, the secretary that are helping run the chamber, but it's just a lot of extra work, and like mind breaking type of work, which is different from our parents' generation or even generations that came before us. Because when this is what I was going to say earlier in the podcast, I was like, how much of our past generational like history goes into play of just being like, keep your head down and just work.
Yeah.
Keep your head down and just work, because that's what we've been told for decades, right? And then you're like, well, I'm still gonna be okay if I just keep my head down and I work, right? And not, I won't lose that job, I won't lose this income, like you said. But it is so frightening too to be like, I have this success and then it can all go away. But then if you don't have the right support and coaching in place, then I go back and think about these three women in my life. I'm like, they're all amazing individuals, and I can even go as far as saying like I think they're smarter than me. You know, like I think they are super intelligent human beings, but for some reason they have not received the success that they should have received
Yeah.
by this time in their career.
Well, I think that you're making me remember that, people always say what is it, that I'm my ancestors' wildest dreams. And I always say, I've beyond exceeded that, right? Like my grandmother did not come here crossing the Rio with the coyote thinking, oh, I'm going to have granddaughters because my sister got her doctorate too. I'm going to have
Yeah,
granddaughters who have doctorates. I'm going to have grandchildren who the majority of them are all going to have at least a college degree.
yeah,
She wasn't thinking about people making multiple six figures and all these other things, right? We've far exceeded anything that our ancestors were expecting of us when they came here. And I still got a whole lot of life ahead of me. So, where's the places where I get to now build a dream bigger than even I've imagined for myself? And I think sometimes we get stuck in, I've already done enough. I've already superseded what happened with the generation before me. This is good. And you know what? If you honestly, in your heart of hearts, believe that that's good, go be happy. God bless you. But I think there's
yes.
a lot of people with deeper dreams inside of them that they're just too scared to actually name and then go after.
Yeah, fear, man. Fear
Yeah.
holds so many people back. I totally get that as well. And well said, Michelle, because I feel like you're right. There's been times where I'm like, oh, like I get these random thoughts in my head. And like, if I'm having these random thoughts of like, I don't know, of building a massive company, like, why did I receive such thoughts? You know, like I'm like,
Hmm.
I better not think about that. You know, so I get you. I get exactly what you're saying, and yeah, I guess it also part of it comes down to every individual too. Like, how much are they, willing to push themselves? Because like I work with a lot of Latinos, so like my main business is taxes and bookkeeping, and a lot of my Latino clients that are freelancers, they're intelligent individuals and I like working with them. But then when they ask me some questions, it's like they turn on their shy button and they ask as if like, am I gonna get in trouble for asking this question? Or like, is this the right question to ask? And I feel like I'm always just mentoring my clients and be like, no, like, yes, I was like, you're the expert. You're the pyrotech expert, for example, this one. I was like, if they want to move you to Tennessee, your rate's not going to go down. Your rate's going to stay the same because you're not moving to Tennessee to get less income, to live at that income. You're moving to Tennessee to make more money and have a better life for yourself. And I just saw his eyes like lit up, right? And I was just like, yeah, there's no way you're not going to take that position. But like, in my own little way, I try to like guide people like that.
Yeah.
Because like the other thing I see that a lot of Latinos won't do is they won't value their time in money, in dollars. Uh,
Hmm.
because our Latinx communities like would be like we value family and time spent with them, and that's more important at the end of your health, and that's more important of you like spending time with your kids and your parents, because they're not going to be here one day, right? But again, you can provide a better life for yourself and for those that come after you or that are here with you if you value your time correctly. And I'm always saying, well, hey, if you don't charge more, then you're telling yourself that you're not worth that much more money,
Hmm.
right? And that's so hard for so many people to understand because a lot of the value, even like my dad, like hard worker, like my dad would work 7 days a week, 2, 3 weeks in a row. And to him, he was making money, and like that's really good money, right? Especially for someone that crossed the border, you
Hmm.
know. And now they have a great living out here. But like again, by taking that extra hour of work or overtime, you're not valuing that your time is worth maybe not 1.5, maybe your time is worth 3 4 x times as that.
Yep.
So like I always see that with a lot of my Latino clients, and I hate to see it, but I always tell them like, no, you're worth more, you can do more, you could charge more, you could do this. And if they really want, like even my client, the one that they were gonna potentially switch them from like 1099 to like W2 in Tennessee, I'm like, no. Okay, so they can go find a pyrotech expert in Tennessee if that's what they're really trying to do.
Yeah.
They're moving you there for your expertise. So you really got to think about this. And like, yeah, he was so grateful that I talked to him about that. But again, that's just one example that I can recently think
Yeah.
about. But like, it's like year after year, I just see these examples come up, and I'm just like, oh, man, like, how have we systemically been told or made to believe that we're not worth as much as our white counterpart?
I got research for it. It starts in kindergarten, and it probably started even before that. But I've got research that it starts that young. So imagine if you've spent probably again before that, but let's say by 5 years old, You've already been told your dreams are impossible. It's not going to happen. Just get in line, do the worksheet, sit in the seat, da da da. And then you do that for 13 years of schooling. That's
Mm.
a lot that's already been embedded with you with like, give up on your dreams and just do what you're told to do. And then it just carries on as an adult if nobody ever interrupts that conversation or that thinking in you. And the system is built for this to happen this way. So again, it's like, so are we going to be leaders who change that?
Yeah, yeah, no, that really does become the question of our generation, I think, because like part of me too is like, hey, now I have nieces and nephews, and I want to guide them, and I want them to be in a better position than I am now. And it's so funny because like I think my now look at myself, looking at like the next generation and the generation that came before me, and even my grandparents. My grandpa told my dad, like, you need to be better, you need to make more money. And then my dad told me that. And then now I'm like, wait, well, if I'm in this position, where will my nephews be 20 years from now?
Yeah.
And they're like, in grade school as well. So it's just like so many things to think about. But yeah, let me ask you the next question. So if a Latino professional wants to move into a leadership role, whichever capacity that is, either at work or, in a nonprofit or in the political scene, what are the first 2 or 3 steps they need to be taking right now?
That question I think ties into actually what you just said. I'm going to kind of bring those together.
Yeah, go for it.
The thing that I think is different, because I reflected on this too. I have nieces and nephews. I personally don't have kids by choice. And so I observe them a lot. And the researcher in me and just like the educator in me is just constantly like observing how they interact with the world and how people interact with them. And something I noticed when they were young, 2, 3 years old, they get Christmas gifts, right? So here's the thing you can do as a Theo. They get their gifts, right? And I remember watching my nephew, and he opened up a box of a game. He didn't know how to play. He couldn't read. He didn't understand. And he just started playing with all the pieces and making something happen, right?
Yeah.
And an adult walks over. No, 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 that's not how you play the game. And starts messing up everything that he had done, trying to show him how to do it the right way. And then the adult walks away, and I'm just watching this whole thing from the couch, right? And then he starts playing with it again his own way. He's making his own game out of this.
Yeah.
Adult walks over. No, 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 no. That's not how it goes. We take creativity out of each other when we're even that young. So the thing I reflect on is I'm grateful for the place I've landed in my life. Yeah. But also I wonder if I would have had more opportunity to play. And my parents did the best they could. They did try to put us in like summer camp programs and stuff like that. But ultimately it was like, I need to go to college. I need to pick a degree. Which degree is going to help me make sure I have a guaranteed job? Once I have that guaranteed job, I started going through the process of like this, you get this position next, then this position next, and this. Now, granted, I did break that at some point, and then now have kind of gone in this other direction. But I wonder, for my niece and my nephew, if we completely gave them creativity, what would they on their own decide was the way that they wanted to build a life and a career that was actually just built on things that they love and that they're creative in? Grateful that I took a pivot and I figured this out for myself. But what would happen if I would have figured this out when I was 15? If I would have had leadership development when I was in college? If I would, there's just so many places where even though we've made it in, society's terms, we still ultimately followed the rules. And I'm curious what this next generation, how they're going to figure it out. Yeah. All that to say that I think what's the most important for folks to figure out is, what's the purpose for your leadership? Why do you even want to lead in the first place? Is it because there's something within you that really needs to get out and be seen and done in the world? Or is it that you just are doing this because you were told that's the next step I'm supposed to take? So understanding the why behind your leadership is critical. Yeah. Then from there, I would say, to the conversation we were having earlier about your strengths, what are you really great at? And then put yourself in positions where you get to do the things you're really great at. And then from there, you can get really clear on, to what we were saying earlier, what are the best environments for me? So I know the purpose of my leadership. I know what I'm really great at. And now I'm going to put myself in environments and with people who allow me to fully do my why and allow me to fully be at my best. That is something that I wish I would have learned a lot sooner, that I'm hoping my niece and my nephew are going to learn a lot sooner. Regardless of whether or not it means more money, I hope it means money and a level of purpose and happiness that it's taken me a long time to find, that hopefully they would find sooner.
Yeah, and imagine like them finding that purpose when they're like 19, 20, 22, yeah. 23. Like, I believe it takes like 10,000 hours to become an expert in the field, right? Which is, if you're working full-time job, like you can compare it to like 5 years worth of work. But that can happen at any point in someone's life, right? Like that can happen when you're in high school or when you're in college. So it's very interesting to me, like where a lot of these individuals in this new generation, what is it called, millennials, I believe, or I forget. Yeah.
You're like Gen Alpha, Gen Gen 7.
Yeah, there's so many. At this point, I'm like, oh, I don't know, girl. The only thing I know is I'm millennial, and that's my reference point. And but yeah, no, I because school is becoming more expensive every day as well. So whereas before, I think in the 90s, 80s, school was very accessible and there was a lot of scholarships for our Latino brothers and sisters. And then just coming out of school with debt of over six figures, or or over $200,000. How is that even something sustainable when like your first job out of college is not going to pay you those kind of like
Mhm.
incomes? So I'm super interested in seeing like what things will be developed now with social media as well. Like there's jobs that were never before considered jobs
Mhm.
back in the 90s and 2000s because of social media alone. So, and even your business and my business, like jumping on this podcast, like, it's part of like your business marketing strategies, right? So yeah, things have changed so much. And yeah, so if a Latino professional wants to take a couple steps, you said first they need to be looking at what their true purpose is,
Mhm.
because that's step one. And I guess that revolves back to like the self-awareness. If we're told for so many years in our life, like we go through life in the beginning, like through preschool, elementary, middle school, high school, then college, like it's kind of like a set path. You don't really gotta think about what your next step is.
Mhm.
Because I remember when I got to college, I was like, oh crap. What do you mean I gotta choose my classes or choose the
Mhm.
like which ones I'm gonna build my degree on? And that was like such a hard thing for me to wrap my head around because I was just like, oh, I wish there was just like follow these courses and like you'll be fine. But no, like I went to a liberal arts college, so I had to like create my own path.
Yeah, yeah.
And but that critical thinking where like you're forced to like think and self-reflect on things that are going on. I wonder like so much of like just put your head down and do your job means you don't force yourself to critically think and like self-reflect, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm constantly thinking about that because I'm like, no, like, I need to. I remember in my MBA school, there was I forget what my friend was asking me about, but I was like, how do you know that? And then she was like, oh, well, you hire tax professionals. But I was already doing taxes, and I was like, oh no, I need to know the answer. I was like, I need to know how that, like, in my brain, I need to know the mechanics of how step one converts to step two, and then three and four. Because if I don't, it doesn't make sense to me. And I might understand the greater concept of it, but then I don't feel confident not knowing all those other little steps.
Okay, I love that you're giving that example because actually, it's something interesting that I like to tell people because some people think they're like so far from their purpose. And I'll always say,
Hmm.
like, I don't think you're as far away as you think you are. Because if you actually look at like the thought process of how you landed where you are, yes, maybe it was like stability of a job and all those other things. But I actually had a client who was an accountant.
Hmm.
And she said similar to, she was like, I was in college and I just needed something stable. And I just thought, what, I'm going to be an accountant. I'll always have a job.
Yeah.
And they said to her, okay, let me pause you for a second. Because I had that same thinking, but accounting was not even number 10, number 100 on the list. There's
Hmm.
still something that drew you to that as the stability that I would venture probably has some level of your strengths and your purpose buried in it. The same way that my level of stability came through joining education, at the end of the day, there was this level of mentoring coaching in that field that drew me to it. I love to speak. As a teacher, you get to speak a lot. Like there was elements of it that I couldn't have named at the time were bringing me towards my purpose. But even in that choice of stability and probably more of like a survival mindset, I
Yeah.
still believe that there's some level of our purpose embedded in that. So you even think like saying like, I need to know how you get from A to B and blah, blah, blah. I'm not thinking about that ever. That's not how my brain works. That's something that I would say like when we have moments like that, get curious about those things. What is the thing that even if you're kind of like, this is not my idea, there's something in it that still somehow is revealing your strengths and your purpose within it. And I'm sure you could probably name a bunch of things about how like the work that you do. I mean, even how you mentioned like in the conversation around money, you're still helping people own their power. Or in the conversation of money, you're still finding a way to like coach and mentor people. That happens to be your vehicle. That's not mine because I could not. I'm the last person to. The first thing I hired when I started my business was a bookkeeper.
Yeah.
So I think there's still something in there, even when we think like that we kind of went the stable route, where you could probably still figure out a lot of purpose and strength in the things if you really sat and reflected on it.
Great advice, especially for any Latino that
Yeah.
I feel like because our society doesn't show that we value like silent, strong leadership, like a lot of people think I need to be like that person on TV or that person on
Hmm.
social media in order to be able to be in a leadership position, And because like that person doesn't reflect who I am most of the time.
Yeah.
So no, great advice on that one. Okay, you studied the nervous system and leadership. How does stress uniquely show up for Latino leaders, and how can they manage it better? I know you were talking a little bit about that earlier. So,
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways I go about this with folks, but I think one is you've actually used the word self awareness a couple times, and I tell people like you just got to be self aware. You have to start to learn, and there's lots of different ways you can do this. Is how do you learn to even just pick up in your body? So I know I come from a lineage of peleoneras, so I tend to go to fight mode. That's been a go to for me. So I'm going to get mad quickly. I'm probably going to say something I'm going to regret later. I'm going to send that email that I wasn't supposed to, kind of thing. So for me, it's been like, how do I actually pause, check with myself, and notice when I'm starting to move in that direction so that I can give myself what it needs? So, for example, I've started to notice my body gets warm when I'm about to go off. So if it's like Michelle, if you, and that's not just perimenopause, it's also because I'm being peleonera. So it's like if I
yeah.
start to notice there's a little bit of heat and I'm in the middle of typing an email, then it's like, don't send the email because likely in this moment you're going into fight mode and you're going to say the thing that you don't need to say. Walk away. And maybe I'm going to have to like completely go into another room. I'm going to need to do some breathing, whatever I need to do to kind of like come down a little bit because I'm in this high arousal where I'm going to do things that I'm kind of like blacking out on, right? But there's other folks who their responses might tend to be so fawn is when you're like perfectionist, people pleasing. I have a lot of folks who are Latinas who tend to go into fawning. And so for that one, we have to think about okay, we're starting to notice a pattern in the way that you're showing up in meetings. So if we already know that this is the pattern and that's your survival mode is to go into people pleasing perfectionism, then we're not going to wait until it happens. So I'll usually have them do like we have like a map that we'll fill out together and we'll start noticing what are the thoughts or the things that you start to do that can be your signal to yourself, oh, I'm going into that mode again. And then we start to figure out what are like 1 to 2 minute exercises you can do to reset yourself before you step in the meeting. Reset yourself when you come out of the meeting so that you can catch yourself and not just blindly kind of keep moving in the direction of your survival mode. So to me, survival mode is if you're starting to move into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. If you can actually be pretty regulated and pretty calm, then you're likely in a very regulated state where you can say, I was thinking clearly, I actually knew exactly what I was doing, and I did the thing that I wanted to do. But you're gonna have to build a lot of self-awareness to start tuning into, oh, that thought's coming back. I already know what happens when that thought comes. What are my exercises or my things that I do to reset that? Or I'm already noticing this feeling, and I actually have a feelings wheel that I'll have people use because I notice a lot of times people struggle to even name what they're feeling in the moment. And once I can name the feeling, then I can actually work with it. Or once I start to feel the sensation in my body, then I know how to work with it. I'll get a lot of folks who will tell me like they'll feel tightness or blocking in their throat. And I'm like, it's probably because you got a lot of things you want to say that you're not letting out. What are some throat exercises that we can do to loosen up and get you ready to actually step into a space where you can speak? When we look at our bodies, we're spending 20% of our time up here in our heads, talking all the time and thinking all the time, but you're not utilizing 80% of yourself, which is your full body, to actually be a leader. So I always talk to people about like, how do we become embodied leaders where you're using 100% of what's available to you? And 100% means you're tuning into your body, your thoughts, your feelings, and then you're doing short exercises periodically throughout the day to actually reset yourself so that you're aware, you're resetting, and you're kind of getting yourself back to as much calm as possible. Life is life. We're never going to be 100% stress-free. I'm not promising anybody that. But can we at least know how to manage it, reduce it, so that I'm tending to show up more calm and clear as opposed to flying off the handle and being peleonera and then I'm freezing and I can't talk to anybody and I'm all over the place? Can we at least get ourselves to some sort of stability?
Right. And then right now you just said peleoneras again, and I thought about, the telenovelas. I'm like, they do not, by any means, they're like, feel your rage, go off
There's
on
no
people.
self-awareness or nervous system work there.
I'm like, they do not promote any of that. So I'm like, that probably doesn't help.
They're not like, vamos a parar para un breathing exercise.
Exactly, right? You're like, let's take a weekend to like do a yoga class or like go on a retreat. No. So no, that makes perfect sense because it also like, a lot of our environment that we grow up. So you say your stress is data. Can you break down and explain how leaders can actually use stress as a tool? Well, I mean, I guess you really just went over it a little bit right now,
Yeah.
but any other tool?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, I know you probably hear a lot of these words and you're kind of like, I don't know what she's talking about. Like when I say things like somatics or nervous system or whatnot. And basically, I'm going to get a little sciencey here, but on purpose. There's a nerve called the vagus nerve that starts actually at the base of your neck. and runs through your whole body. It touches all your organs. So when you feel heart palpitations, guess what's touching that? Your vagus nerve. When you're saying, oh, I feel that in my gut, or I had a gut reaction, guess what touches that? The vagus nerve. So essentially what you're doing when you're trying to reduce your stress and you're working on your nervous system is you're retraining that nerve. So to go back to what I shared earlier, my grandma came here undocumented with a coyote and babies. She was escaping domestic violence in Mexico. She had no plan. She had like 75 cents and that was about it coming across. That's literal life or death survival mode. But that lives in my lineage. Then you have my mom. My mom used to work up to 3 jobs at a time. I would go to work with her in the evenings after school, and we'd be in the back doing our homework while she was doing her like night job, right?
Yeah.
Survival was having to do a lot of work and having to like navigate figuring all these things out with children. I'm in a whole different ballgame. I've got a multitude of degrees. I have a 401k and a savings account and all these other things available to me but my body is still functioning in the same response as what my grandmother's survival looked like and my mother's survival looked like. I have to retrain it to know what actually is the reality of my life today. And so that's not to say that I get there's still people who very much might be in physical survival mode, but I need to retrain my body to understand that what I'm going through right now in deciding whether or not to negotiate this contract is not the same life or death as what my grandmother went through, but my body's still responding in the same way. So when we're retraining it, it's essentially like me taking a moment. You mentioned yoga. I'm a big yin yogi. I love yin yoga. And so I try to go 3 or 4 times a night to reset my body, reset my mind, to kind of reset my emotions at the end of a day, especially because when I'm coaching, I'm taking on a lot of what people are giving me. Yeah. So when you're in a leadership position, you're taking on not only your own emotion, but then also the emotions and the experiences of all the people that you're working with. For me, yin yoga has been a way to kind of get all of that off of me at the end of the day. For somebody else, it might be, I'm going to take a run at the end of the day, and that's how I get the energy moving and I clear that off of me. For somebody else, it might be, I just need to do breathing exercises periodically throughout the day. And so I might take 1 minute before I hop on the next Zoom to do some breathing. Or I might actually have to walk out and literally touch grass to reset my body before I go to the next thing that I'm going to do. So in various ways, we're retraining our bodies to actually come back to the present moment, to find some calm, because if we don't, they're going to keep going into that survival mode. That's not the reality of the survival mode that we likely are living in, that past generations have, but that still lives in us. So you're just retraining your body to know the difference between life or death stress and day-to-day stress. And you're just constantly resetting to find calm and to be able to help your body to come back to the present moment. Because a lot of times when we're stressed out and overwhelmed, it's because we are already assuming all the horrible things that are going to happen tomorrow or 5 years from now.
Yeah, in the future.
Or we can't stop living everything that happened in the past. Both of those are not the reality of the present. So really what I'm teaching people how to do is to just keep bringing themselves back to the present. What's the reality of the present moment? And it doesn't mean we ignore things like the future and whatnot, but we can see them in a very different way after we've had a moment to actually bring ourselves back to the present moment. Now I can see the future a lot more clearly than letting my brain spin to like, I'm going to lose my job and I can't get food and I'm going to lose my home and I'm going to die, which is where your brain is going ultimately when you're stressing out and overwhelmed, right? And so it's like, how do we reset to be like, not going to say those things couldn't be a reality, but in my clear-headed present moment mind, I can think about what I'm going to do to make sure that doesn't happen. And so that's kind of the balance that I'm teaching people to do when we're doing like nervous system and somatic work.
Yeah, that's good. That's good information, especially as tools to take and like to understand that all these things happen on a primal level in our bodies, right? But like we tend to forget that we're not like in that type of physical survival mode.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, that's really good. And then this is my last question. For you. I was like, what time is it? Okay, yeah, I think it's about time, but like, we've been having a good conversation. But if a Latino listener wants to build a life and career aligned with their purpose, what's one exercise or practice they can start today?
So I tell folks, this kind of goes with what we just said. There's this balance between big, audacious dreams and then the current moment. And I feel like people start to get caught up in like, let's say they start saying like, okay, I can define my purpose. I see it. But then they look ahead and they're like, holy, I don't know how I'm going to get there. And then they shut down again. And so we want to have these big audacious dreams, but what we want to work on is how do I just have one manageable step that's the next thing? And it needs to be small. And there's all this research too on just like, even with working with students, how if you have to make things very small and manageable, because if you don't feel success repeatedly, you fall apart when you have something that doesn't work. But when you've had repeated success, you can take that blow a little easier because you're like, oh, but I've had enough success that like, I don't feel like that took me out. So instead of, what I see a lot of people do is they take these big leaps, and it's kind of like, okay, but if it doesn't work, it might shoot you all the way back to where you started. Example, I'll use myself as an example.
Yeah.
I do speaking, right? You know, I get up on stages with mics and I lead workshops and I do all these things, and I feel very comfortable with it. I feel very much like it's in my purpose. It is very much in my strengths. It follows all the things in my strengths finder. Like, it makes sense that this is part of what I'm doing. And when I look ahead to the future, I'm like, I really want to be a global speaker. But then my brain is like, what the hell does that mean? How would I ever do that? That's not it. And I think of all the reasons why it can't happen, because that's what my brain is taught to do. It's taught to keep me alive and to keep me safe and to keep me do all the safe things.
Yeah.
If I were to freak out and just be like, that's never going to happen, then I let it go. But small, manageable things are, I'm like, well, my first entryway into global, there is plenty of places that speak in English, so I could still do some English speaking. But also, there's a whole Latino world out there where I speak Spanish. Could I get my Spanish stronger? I've been speaking a lot more Spanish lately in my life out, you know, in the back in the day when I was working in schools, I could use Spanish every day because a lot of the families only spoke Spanish. I don't really need it anymore. It's very much an active choice to speak Spanish on a regular basis to make it stronger. That's one thing I can be doing right now. Also, I do a lot of speaking in LA and the California area because that's where a lot of my network is. So I have been actively writing proposals and writing pitches to speak in places outside of California. That's one decision at a time. Somebody sent me a link a couple weeks ago to a proposal. They're looking for some speakers in Oregon. And I said, I can do this. I wrote the proposal and I sent it. That's the one step I had to take. Now, somebody else could be like, she's full of it. How the hell is speaking in Oregon going to make her a global speaker? But I have to believe that every little step that moves me out of my comfort zone is moving me in that direction. So when we start to see this big goal for our lives and we start to get really clear on our purpose, don't assume that means that now you're required in some way to take these massive leaps to make it happen. What's one small decision, two small decisions that are things you can do right now and be successful at that are going to help you feel more confident continuing to move in that direction? I never work with someone and then say, okay, now go do it. If they're like, I still want to stay at my job, I'm like, okay, what's the one thing we can do to prep you that at some point you will feel ready to leave? At some point you will feel ready to take a leap. And that feels safer for the nervous system. It helps you to keep checking in with yourself to see what feels safe, what doesn't feel safe. And then at some point, I believe all those little steps will collectively have turned into you getting to that thing. But too many people assume the next step is the biggest step they can take. It doesn't work out, and then they shut down and they don't try again ever. And then we have too many Latinos who are not living in their purpose and are not living like these great audacious lives that they could be living. And so how do we make it safe for us to just start taking some leaps? But I think it just starts with one small step.
One small step. Baby steps.
Totally.
Steps.
Yeah.
Yes. So take a baby step today. And then two more questions that I just thought of actually. One, are you conducting any leadership group classes at the moment that someone could like reach out to you for? And then two, how would someone reach out to you or get a hold of you or your team?
Yeah. So you can find me at michelleseijas.com, or if you go over to Instagram, you can find me at Thriving Chingona. And if you head on my website or you head there, you can find all the links and all the things. I'm always taking, well, not always, but right now I do have space for one-on-one coaching clients.
Yeah.
So I have folks that I work with one-on-one. We meet bi-weekly, and then I am your go-to person. In between those calls, I've got, like I said, I've got a message center where people are sending me voice memos. Actually, I have a few I'm going to listen to after this call. And I have folks who are emailing me samples of things, and they're like, I want your eyes on this agenda, or I want your eyes on this thing before I send it. So I'm kind of like your go-to person that's your confidential space for all the things you need in a one-on-one container. I used to run a group coaching program where people could opt in. I stopped that a couple years ago, so now organizations call me in. So if you have an organization that's like, we want to do some leadership development, it could be actually a program where I come in regularly and work with folks. Or sometimes they'll have me come in and do workshops. I do that as well. I have one organization right now who was like, we want you to support all of our affinity leads. So I'm supporting all the folks who run affinity groups for this national organization. And once a month, I do a leadership development workshop with them. And then every month, they also get a one-on-one coaching call that goes along with supporting them after the workshop. So there's those types of things I'll do for organizations. And I am about to, if you get on my email list now, in May, I am going to relaunch something that folks can opt into, because I'm just seeing right now, more and more of us are the most vulnerable in a lot of the work stuff that's happening right now. There aren't as many organizations offering professional development and all the things that they were before because of maybe tighter budgets, or just because they don't have to support their folks of color and their Latinx employees as much anymore. So I'm opening up a membership container for folks to be able to come in. I'm going to make it a low price point, and it'll be a place where people can come. We'll do calls together as a group, and I'll just offer group coaching for folks. You can bring your scenarios, you can bring what you need help with. As long as you're comfortable discussing it in the group, then I'll be coaching people together at once. And I am a big believer in, even if you didn't bring the coaching question to the container, being able to just be in the space listening. A lot of times I join groups just because I want to listen to the questions other people are asking, because it may be the question I didn't know to ask, or sometimes the coaching somebody else gets is coaching I needed too, and I didn't even need to ask my question to get it. So I'm a big
Right.
believer in group coaching. And so anyway, I'm opening up this membership space for folks to be able to have something that they can, if their organization is no longer paying for that, or it's just a little more difficult to pay for these types of things right now.
Yeah.
And then I do speaking all over the place. So if people are hosting events and they are looking for a speaker for anything, feel free to reach out. But you can find all the links and all the ways to do all of that either at my Instagram, my LinkedIn, or at michelleseijas.com.
On your website, yes.
Yeah.
Awesome, Michelle. You know what? This was amazing. I had a lot of fun talking to
Yeah.
you and having this conversation. I think it's a conversation that a lot of like Latino execs I need to listen to. So I'll be forwarding it once it's out to a bunch of people. And then one thing I did think about right now was like AI,
Mm.
because I'm part of this entrepreneur group and there is a business owner there that started an AI coaching. So I'll look into it and maybe send you the link to it so you can check it out. But yeah, it's a way for you to essentially be able to take on more coaching clients because you would create an avatar of yourself
Mm-hmm.
on the AI platform, and then they ask that AI platform or Michelle avatar, whatever you want to call it, and then they would respond in the way that you respond to them
Yeah.
because you have to train this avatar to be you. But yeah, thank you so much. I won't take up more of your time. Thank you. Mil gracias. So, bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us, guys, to another episode of Latinx Business Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Gomez. And if you need any help or have questions on taxes or bookkeeping, or you want to get a hold of anyone that has interviewed here on the show, please reach out to us and we will get a hold of you. Best way to reach out to us is through our website, rgtaxes.com, and we'll set you up with an initial consultation. And yeah, thanks for joining. Please subscribe and like and share these episodes with your friends and family. Again, especially this one, I think so many Latinos that are born here, we need this information. So spread it as much as you can. It's free to spread. And that'd be a great way for you guys to help us push the show forward. But once again, thank you for listening to another episode of Latinx Business Podcast. Till the next time. Bye.